1. I want to preface this by saying that I have always been sensitive to the paranormal. Ever since I was a child, I have had encounters with things I couldn't explain. Growing up with this sensitivity has led me to not fearing the paranormal. If anything, I was more curious than scared. My brother's best friend once told me that when it came to the paranormal, I was the definition of curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. Most of my encounters happened at my childhood home and my grandparents' house where we lived to take care of my ill grandma. They are right next to each other. The ones that will always stick with me, though, are the ones that have happened to me in my childhood home. The childhood home I now live in. In this house, I had one of the most terrifying experiences to date in my short 25 years of life. And it all happened in the exact same spot that I've been having experiences spanning over a decade plus. A simple hallway. My first one that I can remember is when I was laying down on the floor of my childhood bedroom watching TV. I heard something outside my door which was open and looking up. I saw nothing but the wall in the hallway. I ignored it and turned my attention back to the TV and then heard someone whisper my name from the hallway. I looked up again and I saw a foot and a leg walk out of view, going towards the back of the house. Like I just missed them walking past and only caught their retreating foot and leg. Now it wasn't anyone in my house because this foot and leg was not human. It was black, but not solid black. It was almost like a translucent black. I never told my parents because they were super religious, and I never really liked to make a fuss with them at this time because my brother had died a few years prior. My brother died in 2004 when I was 7 and he was 22. To say it was hard was an understatement. My 7-year-old mind just didn't understand death. All I knew was one day my brother was here, and the next, he was gone. And my family was forever changed. Fast forward to winter 2019. I moved out of my parents' home, grandparents' home, and back to my childhood home. I was a single 20-something who owned her own house, so of course my house became the designated hangout spot. I had one friend, Kay. One night she asked if she could bring her friend over so we could hang out. I said yes. So we did, and she introduced herself and we all sat down and started talking. The other girl, Jay, was fidgety, and the moment she sat down, I dismissed at his nerves to meeting someone new. But it was obvious she was uncomfortable. She started mumbling under her breath, and her eyes kept darting towards the hallway. I gave my friend a look as to say, "Who the hell did you just bring into my house?" She shrugged and we decided to see if she settled, but she didn't. Finally, I just asked her if everything was okay. She looked back at the hallway and mumbled something inside. She told me, "There's a man standing right there. He says he's your brother." She pointed to the hallway and waited for my response. I immediately looked at Kay and she shook her head. We had been friends for a while, but we never talked about my brother. I sighed and took a breath. I thought maybe it could be a prank. I didn't know this girl, and my friend could have told her I had a dead brother. I decided to play along and asked what he looked like. Mind you, I don't have any pictures of my brother hanging in my living room where we were. So she looked at the hallway and said, "He's tall, kinda heavy set. He has a long-sleeved cream-colored shirt, jeans, and work boots." I took it in, and it sounded a lot like my brother, but a simple Facebook or Instagram lookup would show what my brother looked like. But then she said something that made the hair in the back of my neck stand up. He has short black hair and he's wearing sunglasses and he's wearing them backwards. The lenses are on the back of his head. The sunglasses. That one detail is something that she nor my other friend couldn't have known. I remember him wearing them like that, and wearing them like that in the only picture that I've ever seen. I asked her to ask him why he was here, and she looked back at the hallway, and she looked back and told me. He said he comes when you're sad, and you've been sad a lot lately, and so he's been staying in that back room. What she and my friend didn't know was that back room was his old room that I turned into a storage room. I was shocked. Was my brother here watching over me? I then asked her if he had seen our dad. My dad had died in 2016. She said that he said no. I finally looked over into that hallway and told him he had to leave, that I was a big girl, and that I could take care of myself. She said that he was not happy with what I was saying, that he said no, and that he needed to be here to take care of me and watch over me. I told him he needed to leave and to go and find our dad. She looked back to the hallway and said he looked like he was thinking over what I said. She then looked over at me and told me that he was leaving, walking down the hallway towards his room. Then after a few minutes she said, "He's gone." I was still in shock the rest of the night, and to be honest, the night was over after that. I never saw that girl again. Fast forward to January 25th, 2022, I had fallen asleep on my couch after work. I was having a nightmare where I was hiding from someone or something. I could feel my heart racing in fear. I knew whatever it was evil. I was hiding in a stall, and then I heard footsteps, and then they stepped in front of the stall. And after a few seconds, I saw a hand come into view and grab the bottom of the stall door, but the hand was not human. It was black, and its fingers were long, and the nails were long like claws. Before I could scream, in my dream I felt the same hand and its claws sink into the back of my neck and push me forward, and I felt myself falling downward like I had just gotten pushed off a cliff. In my dream, as I was falling and screaming, I heard myself scream, like my subconscious was screaming at me, and I heard myself yelling, "Pull up! Pull up!" After hearing that, I felt like I had to fight my way back to the surface, like hitting the bottom of the deep end of a pool and using everything in me to get back to the top before I ran out of breath. I remember hearing myself whimpering in fear before I gasped for air and opened my eyes. When I did, my eyes immediately went to the hallway. I felt like whatever had me was there staring at me. My dog was also barking towards the hallway. I immediately got up and hung a cross on the entryway of the wall and put anointing oil. I grew up Christian, anywhere I could reach around that area while praying and reciting Psalms 91. When I finally calmed down, I went to my room and got ready to take a shower. When I was fixing to get in the shower, something caught my attention. I had 3 long scratch marks on the back of my neck, right where that hand was. They disappeared a few days later. I haven't had an experience since. That hallway still terrifies me, and that cross is still there. I know enough to know this all sounds like a demonic attachment. Was that really my brother? Probably. Probably not. My brother's best friend agrees, him being a paranormal investigator. He did a brief investigation when we caught an EVP of something. Of what we don't know. He wants to do an in-depth investigation, but to date, I've declined because I don't want to ramp up any activity that has gone dormant. It leaves me alone. I leave it alone. No more nightmares. No more marks. 2. I just felt like sharing a strange experience I had in my house. I've lived in this house since the beginning of 2013 and never experienced anything before. This happened a couple of months ago. It actually makes me sick to my stomach to think about. I was sitting at my kitchen table in my usual spot. My 6-year-old daughter was on the 2nd floor of my house in the upstairs living room, more or less right above my head. She was loudly shifting through her Lego box. To my left, at the table, is an underside of the staircase to the 2nd floor. I can't see who's on the stairs or the top or bottom of the stairs from where I was sitting. If you were descending the stairs, the door to the room we use as an office is directly to the right across a short hallway from the bottom of the stairs. From my chair at the table, I can see the entire hallway between the bottom of the stairs and the door to the office. I can also see a sliver of the interior of the office. As I was sitting at the table and semi-listening to the noise my daughter was making with the Legos, I heard someone walk down the stairs. I wasn't really looking towards the office, but I saw the back of my daughter's head as she walked into the office, or so I thought. A few seconds later, I heard someone start walking down the stairs, this time louder than the first time I heard it. I realized that something odd had just happened, so I looked towards the hallway. I watched as my daughter walked into the office with both her hands full of her Lego creations. I hurried over to the office and looked inside. My daughter was the only one in there. She was putting her Legos on one of the desks. I asked her if she came down to the office and then went back and came back down again, but she said she hadn't. There wasn't enough time for her to go upstairs again and come back down, although I would have seen her come out of the office. I didn't see the face of the first daughter to go into the office, but the height appeared about right. The hair color, the length, the shirt color were correct for my daughter. I'm thoroughly creeped out by this. As creeped out as I was when my daughter used to wave and say goodbye to her closet when we'd get her up from naps and in the mornings when she was around too. I'm unsure what to make of this. I lived in a house with shadow people when I was my daughter's age and really don't want to deal with anything creepy ever again. 3. I've been wanting to share my experiences with others for a long time. But in real life, I'm unsure about who would take me seriously, so I thought I would share here. I grew up in Scotland, and throughout my childhood, I have lived in 2 different haunted houses. House 1. I moved into this house when I was 5 and lived there for 4 years. It was a 2-bedroom house, and we were a family of 4. The house was 7 years old when we moved into it, and was an end terrace with 2 other homes making up the full terrace. I had a garden. The house sat on a steep hill, and you climbed stone steps to reach it. Below the house was a small car park. I remember in my bedroom often feeling like I was being watched. We had a dog that would also act strange in the house. One time he was barking and following an unseen entity in the kitchen, growling and acting defensive. We also went through 2 different cats that each died within a short time of being brought home. Found dead, both in the house and the garden. Vets cited unexplained death. In this home, I had 2 experiences. One evening when I was 7, I finished having a bath and put on my pajamas. My mum continued to bathe my younger brother. My dad was away working abroad. I wanted to go watch TV and made my way downstairs. The flight of stairs was straight. When I got to the top of the stairs to walk down, I saw a man standing at the bottom of the stairs. He was solid at the top, and his legs were see-through. He had no feet. My second experience involved being in bed. I was fully awake and not long in bed. I rolled over to my side and saw a young child sitting on the floor next to my bed where I kept my toys. I sat up in my bed, looked at the child, and then looked toward my brother's bed to check it wasn't him. My brother was in his bed. When I looked back, the child was gone. In this house, my mum also saw a hooded monk in her bedroom. The neighbor living next door also saw, from her bedroom window, a hooded monk floating in the car park. My dad had no experiences apart from one evening having the hairs on his neck and body stand up and feeling an evil presence behind him in the hallway. My dad is a skeptic. We moved out to buy a new house. The family that moved in after us suffered an awful haunting, for some reason much more active and threatening than what we had experienced, and had the church come to cleanse the house 3 times before moving out. House 2. This house was about 200 years old and located in the same village we moved in when I was 9, and stayed for only 3 years before moving away. My first experience involved my friend and I when we were playing outside. I was about 11 at the time. During bright daylight hours, we both saw a large orb about the size of a dish plate float down the front garden, and then into the kitchen via an open window before disappearing. It glowed. The kitchen was full of adults, none of which saw it. My other experience involved walking up the stairs one night after using the downstairs toilet. To go back to bed, an unintelligible voice whispered and blew very loudly into my right ear. I felt the breath against my cheek, in my ear, and my reaction was, after freezing still for a moment in shock and horror, to scream and cry and run away to my parents' room. This was the most terrifying experience of all of them for me. It felt like something was making me afraid on purpose. Every babysitter we had complained to my parents of hearing people walking back and forth upstairs and up and down the stairs. This only happened once my brother and I were in bed sleeping. We had 3 babysitters who would often look after us, and they all reported this to happen frequently. They all would check my brother and I to make sure it wasn't us, and it never was. My dad worked long hours, so we often took family holidays without him. When we would be away, and when relaxing in bed, my dad would often hear someone in heavy boots walk up the stairs and down the hall before stopping at the bedroom door. My mum also had experiences. Whatever haunted this house would mimic people she would know, namely my aunt who lived about 90 miles away. The ghost did this vocally, so my mum would sometimes hear my aunt laughing and having a conversation in a room nearby. My aunt was obviously not there, and the room would be empty. My mum was also tapped on the shoulder and scratched on the back of the head. My mum also saw a dark shadow figure in her bedroom one evening. Other strange things to take place in the house included the landline telephone ringing, and then nobody being on the other end. When we would redial the number, it would cause the other landline telephone in the house to start ringing. So essentially, the phones would dial and call one another. If anyone found the above of interest, or if you have any theories or even questions, I would love to hear them. 4. I live right beside a funeral home owned by an old man. I've lived here for a couple of years right in the center of my town and never had any issues. Until a few months ago when strange things started to occur. We share a 5-foot fence, and behind the funeral home is a small parking lot that stays empty except for the hearse. There's a small hill and a tree line. I've never seen the old man who lives in and owns the funeral home. I only hear him play a piano around 9 p.m. once a week. One night, around 2 or 3 a.m., I was outside smoking and I see this huge shadow-like figure, about 10 to 15 feet tall by the trees. I started recording on my phone. I have seen that tree line 1,000 times because it's right at my point of view from where I sit. I've never seen anything so bizarre, until a few weeks after that. I was upstairs fixing my curtain in the window, just shy of midnight, when I spot a man's face looking up at me. This was behind my house, and the man who lives behind me was in his apartment watching TV. He sits next to the window. I could only see what looked like an unfamiliar man's face, which was lit up by a bluish-gray tint. He was just looking straight up at me. He had a pale face and dark eyes, and I can only describe his facial expression as dark and chilling. I could just feel it in my gut that something wasn't right. I had the overwhelming sense of dread. So I looked at my phone and started to record him from below. When I was recording, I noticed my phone was picking up multiple faces in the dark. I think I counted 4 or 5 pale, translucent, ghostly faces surrounding the first one in some of the video. Now, I know it could just be face pareidolia. I try to see myself as a logical person, but this was so ominous. I was very frightened. Other strange noises like tapping and scratching on my walls, hearing clicking noises. At 2 a.m. the same night, a building at the end of my street caught on fire. I couldn't sleep for obvious reasons, and saw my window just explode with orange light. So right at this moment, while shitting my pants, I slowly get up to look. The entire building was engulfed with flames. Luckily, the building was empty. Thankfully, I made it through the night without having a complete nervous breakdown. 2 days later, word gets out. The old man who runs the funeral home has been caught stacking up bodies on top of each other in the basement for the second time. His reasoning for not properly handling them was he is retired. I heard he had an assistant, but they were on vacation. At one point there was 12 bodies, and one in major decomp. It's the second time in a year his license was suspended. He also got in trouble for swapping the cremated remains of at least 2 of his clients. He had a bunch of conditions when his license was reinstated the first time, but clearly he didn't follow them. He was shut down, obviously. Once the bodies were removed, things stopped happening. But even just hearing him play the piano gives me the heebie-jeebies. 5. I grew up in England in what my family referred to as an upside-down house. Basically, the row of houses were built on a hill, so you entered into the upstairs, your hall, living room, dining room, kitchen, and toilet, and went downstairs for bedrooms, which opened out onto the garden. The house itself was never comfortable. For context, I'd have birthday parties where kids would line up to use the upstairs bathroom instead of daring to go use the downstairs one. My mom found a cross necklace in her wardrobe one time. Another time her work shirt disappeared and she tore about the whole house, only for it to show up at the very front of her wardrobe all pressed and clean. Another time I was in the downstairs bathroom and I was singing nonsense lyrics I was making up in my head. A male voice sang the next line I had in my head. I ran to the stairs, sat down halfway up, and all I could hear was his laughter. So yeah, fun house. The doll's story still remains as the single most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me, paranormal-wise. I honestly can't recall my age, but it was before age 10. I had one of those bunk beds with storage underneath. The night before, I'd set up a stuffed toy sleepover in my bed. Not relevant, but there you go. I woke up that morning and didn't immediately open my eyes. I could sense someone watching me. I finally opened my eyes and noticed that something feels off about the line of dolls and toys on the shelf over my wardrobe. It's a long, thin room, and this is exactly opposite my bed. One doll's eyes feel different. Still doll eyes, but not. No blinking or movement, but different. I can feel its eyes on me as if it were human eyes looking at me. Only way I can describe it. I close my eyes and reopen them. Nothing changes. I count to 10 mentally. I throw off the covers, practically jump down the ladder and bail. I turn back at the door and I swear to God that this thing is leaning out over the edge of the shelf to watch me go. I hid in my mum's bed with her terrified it would follow after me. I later cautiously went back in and stared at it, but it was a doll again. I took it down and hid it in the back of the wardrobe for who knows how long. I've never been comfortable around dolls since. Whatever was in that house, at least whatever was male, liked to scare. I visited the street about 8 years ago, after having moved out over a decade ago. The house still gives me the creeps. My mother's friend still lives down the street. She signed up for a permanent night shift at her job because she said dark shadows would appear in her window at night. She also says she senses people coming up behind her when she's home alone. So yeah, fun house. Fun street. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Schmippity and the Boopity Boop. Oh no, wait, that's Paranormal Stories, episode 288. Sorry, it's getting a little warmer again this weekend, so my brain's melting once again. Okay, let's see. Before you go, if you'd be so kind, these paranormal videos, they need as much love as they can. So please hit the like button and share the video with at least one friend if you could. And thank you so much to everyone who's done so. Alright, now you will notice something a little different about the images in today's video, and that is that they're a bit more exact than the ones I usually use. They're always thematically correct for the story I'm doing, but I did get access to something called Stable Diffusion, which is an image generator. Basically, you type in what you want, you can be as specific as you like, and an artificial intelligence will do its best to essentially create the images from nothing for you. And it took a few attempts with some of them to find something that worked, and I have to do a little bit of tweaking and photoshipping here and there to make sure it met my needs exactly. But I think you'll agree it did a really good job overall. And so I'm going to be using that for images and thumbnails for as long as I have access to it. I don't know how long access lasts, but I'm having a great time, and so far it doesn't seem to be limited. So, yay! Alright, now I believe we actually have a birthday shout out to do today. It's the 12th today, isn't it? Yes, I'm quite sure we had one to do on the 12th. And today's shout out goes to Ven C. They are 24 today. Their fiancé and they are going to get some takoyaki from a ramen shop near them. Well, you're just rubbing it in because, oh, Hellfreezer, he likes his ramen, he likes his sushi, all the nice foods like that. But I have to get store-bought because we don't have stores that sell them locally, unfortunately. But I want you to enjoy it extra muchly for me then, both of you. Have a great time, and just make sure you relax for, you know, why stress ourselves? The world is full of stress. I want you to celebrate your birthday for a month, right? So you're good right through to the 11th of September. These are stressful times, so why not take any little moments to relax and pamper ourselves we can get, yeah? Alright, now before we go, I'm going to sing happy birthday, and then we might have a question of the day. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Vancy. Happy birthday to you. All right, let's see. Let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, will someone please cover me in ice? No, wait, no. Don't feel too bad for me. The English have got it much worse this weekend. Always a bit cooler up in Scotland, thankfully. But anyway, today's question of the day is food that is prepared hot that you enjoy more cold. For me, like pasta and pizza, both much better cold. And for some reason, although I really enjoy it hot, Chinese food, once it's cooled down, just so good. I don't know what it does to the flavor, but it's something, man. I don't know there's a scientific reason for what happens to food chemically when it cools and all that sort of thing, but just so good. You might have more unusual items that you might like to share with us, so let me know what you think in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.